What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Oak Tree Football channel, and welcome to another 2020 college football schedule breakdown and record prediction. Today, I'll be doing the Ohio State University. I did another Big Ten school yesterday. I did Penn State, if you haven't seen that. But today, I'll be doing another Big Ten school, of course, in Ohio State. Ohio State, in recent years especially, but it just in their history has been a dominant college. Recently, they just made the college football playoff last year. A few years ago, they lost Dwayne Haskins at the quarterback position, but they were able to replace him with Justin Fields, who has only played one season, but he's already one of the best quarterbacks in college football and was a Heisman finalist last year. And the future looks bright for Ohio State. They did lose some players. They did lose their two best players, arguably, on the defense, in Jeff Okudah and Chase Young, who are both top 3 picks of the draft. But they still do have some good players on that defense, and they have some good players in their offense as well, especially their running back. Master Teague is their backup running back, and honestly, I think he's a starting caliber running back. So it looks like a very good roster for Ohio State, but will they be able to use that roster and become one of the top teams in college football? This is my prediction. So in 2019, they had one loss, 13-1. Their one loss was in the college football playoff against Clemson. They were dominant in the regular season, and they were considered by some to be the best college football team over LSU, who ended up being the number 1 team in the playoff. But they had the number 5 ranked recruiting class, which is, of course, really, really good. And it's just going to help out their already stacked team. So let's get into it. Week 1, they played Bowling Green. Started off with an easy game this season. Bowling Green should not really put up a fight whatsoever. It's not the best football team, and Ohio State should be able to win that game pretty comfortably. I don't feel like there's that much to say about that one. It just doesn't seem like the toughest game for Ohio State this season. Week 2, though, is a very, very tough game, and that is at Oregon. At Oregon makes it so much tougher. Oregon is a very, very good football team, and I did my prediction video on them a few days ago. If you have not seen that, go check it out after this video. But Oregon, very good football team, and I think they could be in the playoff this year. And I think Ohio State could be in the playoff as well, so this could be possibly an early playoff matchup. This is probably Ohio State's toughest game of the year, probably over some more that I'll be talking about later. But this is probably Ohio State's toughest matchup, especially because they're on the road. That just makes it so much harder. Oregon could definitely win this game, and it's going to be a close game. I really do think so. But I do think Ohio State is the better team. At the end of the day, I think Ohio State does have the better roster, especially on offense, than Oregon. Like, Ohio State's offense is probably the best in the country, or at least top 3, maybe at worst top 5, but definitely one of the top offenses in the country. So it's going to be a really, really interesting game. It's an intriguing matchup, probably the best game of week 2. I'm really excited for that game, and it's going to be close. It's going to be a close game, but I think, Ohio State is the better team overall, but because it's at home for Oregon, it's just going to make it such a close game, and it's going to be really fun to see. I think Ohio State might squeeze out a victory, but I would not be surprised if Oregon does get a win in that game. They then play Buffalo. It's good that after the Oregon game, they get to have an easier one at home against Buffalo. So at this point in the season, they should probably win this game, I would say, especially just such a good roster. They should win this game against a not great Buffalo team. So I think at this point they have at least 2 wins against Bowling Green and Buffalo, and potentially 3. And then I think they can make that either 3 or 4 in their next week against Rutgers. Rutgers just isn't the best football team. They're definitely not on the level as Ohio State is. It's at home for Ohio State. I feel like this should be a fairly easy win for them, and they should be able to either be undefeated or have 1 loss at this point in the year. So it is a pretty easy start to the season, other than that Oregon game. Then they have a bye week, and then they play Iowa It is at home, which is why I think they'll probably win it, but I do think it could be close because Iowa is a pretty good football team. They're a bit underrated, honestly, but they are a pretty good football team, and I could see them putting up a fight against Ohio State. It's just Ohio State is Ohio State, and they are one of the best teams in college football. And Iowa is not one of the best teams in college football. They are a very good team. I'm not saying that they're a bad team, but they are not one of the best teams in college football. And I do think it will be a win for Ohio State. But I definitely could see Iowa putting up some points. And, it could be closer than some people might expect. Week 7, they play at Michigan State. Michigan State isn't the greatest team, but I actually could see this game being a bit close, especially because Ohio State's defense, I don't know, they're not the best defense, so I feel like Michigan State might be able to score some points on them. It's still a great defense for Ohio State. It's just there are some holes that they would need to fix. So I could see Michigan State actually putting up some points and making it a bit closer than people would expect, but it should still be an Ohio State win. Sorry. It is at Michigan State. But I do still believe it should be an Ohio State win. And then they have arguably the toughest game of the season. I would say it's their second toughest after the Oregon game, but at Penn State. Once again, their two toughest games of the season, I would say, are both not at home, which is not going to help. And they could lose both of those games this season, to be honest. But I really do think if they play anything like they did last year or even improve, they should not lose those games. Maybe they will lose against Oregon, but I don't think they will lose against Penn State. Penn State versus Ohio State has been a fun game to watch for many years now. It's such an important game in the Big Ten for who goes to the conference championship and stuff. It's a really, really fun game to watch every year. Two of the best teams in college football, honestly, two top 10 teams in college football playing each other. It's a really, really fun game to watch, and it should be again this year. We've seen some good finishes. I'm not sure if Penn State will be able to win. They were able to win a few years ago and go to the Big Ten championship, but last year Ohio State was able to go to the Big Ten championship game, and it's going to be really, really interesting to see who actually wins this game because it's so important for the Big Ten. I do think, like for Oregon, I do think Ohio State is the better team, but it is at Penn State, which of course is better for Penn State. So it could be a close game. It probably will be a very, very close game. And I think Penn State has a pretty solid offense, and I think they can target some of the weak points on Ohio State's defense. But their offense is going to be hard to stop, honestly. Even with one of the best linebackers, maybe even one of the best defensive players in college football, and Micah Parsons. Ohio State is just a really, really good football team, and it's going to be a very entertaining game, such an important game. That's going to be really tough for Ohio State, but I do think they might be able to win. I do think they might be able to win this game. It might be close, but it probably will be close, but I do think they will be able to squeeze out a victory. They then play Nebraska, who Nebraska could actually be pretty good this season if everything goes right for them. Did not go great for them last year, but I do have some high hopes for them this season if they can do everything right. I think Nebraska could actually be a solid team. That being said, though, I don't think they'll be as good as Ohio State, and I do think Ohio State will be able to win this game, especially because it's at home. I think they'll be able to win this game pretty comfortably. Nebraska might put up a few points, but I do think Ohio State is the better team and should win fairly easily. And then Week 10, Indiana. Indiana could actually be a very, very good football team this year, and I would not be surprised if they are potentially near a top 25 spot. But it is in Ohio State, which it's just going to make it tougher for Indiana, and their roster is not as good as Ohio State by any means. And Ohio State should be able to win this game. They should be able to. That doesn't mean they will, but it might be close. I think it can be a close game, but Ohio State should be able to win that game. They then play Maryland. This one shouldn't be too much of a challenge. It is at Maryland, but it still shouldn't be too much of a challenge for Ohio State this season. I do think they should be able to win that game fairly comfortably. And then Week 12, Illinois. Illinois could actually be decent this season. and they might lose to them. Ohio State might lose to them, but in the end, I do think they will probably be able to win this game. It is at Illinois, and I do think it might be a bit of a close game, closer than people might expect, but still, even with Illinois potentially having a good season, I could see them having a decent season this year, but Ohio State still, like, I feel like I've said this about many teams, but it's just true. Ohio State is the better team, and they should be able to win. And then to end the season, unless they make the championship game or the playoffs or a bowl game, which they probably will get. But Week 13, they play Michigan, and this is one of the biggest rivalries, biggest games every year in college football, one of the most exciting games to watch, except it hasn't been as exciting these past few years because Ohio State has just really been able to dominate. And, I mean, I can't see why they shouldn't do the same this year. I mean, Michigan, I don't know if they'll be as good as last year. It's going to be interesting to see how good they are. But Ohio State, they're probably going to get better. It depends how Justin Fields plays. If Justin Fields improves in his second year, Ohio State will probably be even better this season than last season. Even with a weaker defense, they should still be the better team. And they are better than Michigan, especially this game being at home for them. I do think it will be another win for Ohio State against Michigan. And I don't know if I don't know when Michigan will be able to beat Ohio State again, but I do not believe it to be this year. So now I will go through every game once again, and I will say who I believe will win this season. For me, Ohio State really has 3 tough games this season that they could lose. There are a few games that might be a bit surprising that they might have a bit of trouble in, but there are really 3 games that I can see them losing. That's Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan. 2 of those games are on the road. I would say the toughest games are on the road, which isn't going to help. But like I just said, now I'll go through and take a look at if I think they'll win or lose. Week 1 against Bowling Green, I think that's a win. Bowling Green is not a great football team. Ohio State should be able to win. Week 2 against Oregon, it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be very important for playoff implications. But I do think Ohio State will be able to win this game. Start off 2-0. I think they'll be able to beat Buffalo and Rutgers as well to have a 4-0 start before a Week 5 bye week. I think they'll beat Iowa. It might be a bit close, but I do think they will win. I think they'll beat Michigan State pretty comfortably. Michigan State might be able to put up some points, but it should still be a fairly comfortable win. I think they will barely beat Penn State. That's going to be such an exciting game to watch, and I think it'll be really close. But I do think Ohio State will be able to squeeze out a victory. I think they'll beat Nebraska. Maybe a bit closer than some people might expect, but just because it's at home, it should be a win for Ohio State. And same with Week 10 against Indiana. Indiana might be able to put up a fight, but it is at home for Ohio State, and they should be able to get the job done. And then Maryland, I think that's a win, even on the road. Illinois might be a tough game on the road, but I still do think they should be able to win that game fairly comfortably. And then I do think they will beat Michigan in the final week of the season to go a perfect 12-0 this season. The worst I could see Ohio State doing is 9-3, but I don't think that will happen. That's worst case scenario. 9-3 is worst case scenario. 12-0 is, of course, best case scenario, and I do think it will be best case scenario for them. I think this will get them a spot in the Big Ten championship game, and I do think it will guarantee them a spot in the college football playoff. I do think that Ohio State is one of the best college football teams, and really, people are really saying that it's going to be either Clemson or Ohio State as the number 1 spot in the rankings this season, and I would have to agree with that. I haven't done the Clemson prediction yet, but I will do it soon. But I do think Ohio State is definitely one of the best teams in college football. I do think they will make the playoff, even if they lose the Big Ten championship game, which I don't think they will. But even if they did lose that game, I still think that the regular season would be enough to get them into the playoffs, and they could win the national championship this year. They didn't play. Well, they started off well in last year's national championship or last year's college football playoff, but ended up losing to Clemson. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think we might see them playing Clemson again this year, but in the national championship game. And then Justin Fields is a huge part of that. I've talked about Justin Fields, not just in this video, but before on the channel. I said that I think he will be a Heisman contender this season, a Heisman finalist once again. And I don't think he'll win, but I definitely think he will be very, very close. Just an all-around great roster for Ohio State, and it's just a really, really good team, and I do think they will go 12-0 this season, even with tough games against against Penn State and against Oregon. I do think they will be able to win all those games and go 12-0. So that is what I think about Ohio State this season. What do you think about Ohio State? Tell me in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like, and if you're new around here, or just aren't subscribed, feel free to subscribe for more daily NFL and college football content. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.